You know what I'd do? First thing, the day I get back.
Here we go.
Whataburger. Not even the good one, the sad one off the highway. Honey butter chicken biscuit, 2 of them. And I'm gonna eat them in the parking lot like an animal.
That's it? That's your whole dream? You got 11 months in a desert to think about it, and you came back with a biscuit.
Don't you talk about the biscuit.
President again.
The hell was that? You hear that?
That's not our frequency. We're the only ones out here.
Dunbar, Reyes, Martinez, Pratt, Linder.
How does it have our names?
Say again your last. Say again your...
I want to be honest with you about who we were, because it matters to how this ends. We were the leftovers. Every deployment has a detail like ours. You just don't hear about it, because nothing we did was worth hearing about. When the line companies went out to do the real work, somebody has to stay behind and run the back of the house, fix the trucks, cook the chow, count the bullets, answer the phone. That was us. Headquarters company, the bottom of it. A maintenance section, a couple of cooks, the supply shop, and a handful of guys who were one paperwork error away from getting sent home early and knew it. I'll give you the cast because you'll need it. Staff Sergeant Dunbar was in charge. Dunbar had been in 19 years and was tired in a way I didn't understand until I was older. He wasn't a hard charger. He wasn't going to inspire anybody. What Dunbar could do, the one genuine talent that man had, was make a piece of paper say exactly what it needed to say. He'd been covering for screw-ups his whole career, his own included, and there was nothing in the Army's filing system he didn't know how to bend. At the time, I thought that made him a dirtbag. I've since changed my mind. There was me. I told you about me. There was Mathis. Mathis was a specialist, maybe 20, and he was the one who made the detail bearable. Talked constantly. Told the same 4 stories on a loop. He's the one in the truck going on about the biscuit. You'd want to strangle him by hour 3, and you'd have followed him anywhere by hour 6. There was Pratt, a mechanic, who didn't talk at all, which balanced Mathis out nicely. There was Ruiz. Ruiz was a cook, and Ruiz is important, so remember him. Ruiz was not supposed to be there. The tasking was for 5 guys, and he wasn't one of them. He came because the alternative was 3 weeks of kitchen duty back at the FOB, and he'd rather eat sand than scrub another Cambro. So he stowed his stuff on our truck, and nobody stopped him, because nobody who works in the back of the house ever volunteers, and you don't turn away a man who does. He wasn't on any roster for the trip. As far as the United States Army was concerned, Ruiz was somewhere else entirely. And then there was Linder. Linder was on our manifest. PFC Linder, right there, name printed on the tasking order. But Linder had stepped off a Connex 2 days before and snapped a bone in his foot, and he was back at the FOB in a boot, on quarters, going nowhere. There hadn't been time to recut the paperwork, so Linder's name came with us, on the order, in the system, but Linder did not. You see what I'm telling you? Before we ever left the wire, our books were already wrong. We had a name with no man, Linder, on paper, not present, and a man with no name, Ruiz, present, on no paper. And by pure dumb luck, those 2 errors canceled out in the one place anybody ever bothered to look. The order said 5. We loaded 5 bodies. 5 and 5. The number matched. It just wasn't the same 5. I keep coming back to that, because at the time it felt like nothing. It felt like the kind of small unit mess that happens every single day in every army in the world. I didn't think it was the thing that would save our lives. I didn't think it was anything at all. The tasking itself was supposed to be a nothing. Way out east of us, past where anybody patrolled, there was an old industrial site sitting on a dry salt flat. The Soviets had built it back in the 60s. A phosphate works, fertilizer, that kind of thing. Big gray concrete silos, a couple of long process buildings, a rail spur that went out into the flat and stopped at nothing. The salt pans around it had gone to a white crust you could see from the air, like a lake had died there and left its bones. Nobody had run the place in decades, but it had a working set of remote sensors on it, perimeter cameras, a ground radar package, the usual, installed by a contract crew, 2 civilians who lived out there in a trailer and kept the equipment running. The site mattered to somebody up the chain for reasons that were above all of us. The 2 contractors had gone quiet. No check-in for 4 days. Their sensors had stopped reporting, then started reporting garbage, then stopped again. Our job, drive out, find the contractors or find out what happened to them, reset their gear, account for everything of value, and come home. A welfare check and an inventory. They sent us because the line companies were committed elsewhere, and the area was designated completely safe. There was no fighting reported there, ever. The site had a grid coordinate. It had 3, actually. The tasking order put it in one place. The contract company's paperwork put it about 4 kilometers from there. And the old map the S2 shop dug up, a reproduction of a Soviet survey, put it somewhere a couple kilometers off from both. 3 documents, 3 locations, for one set of buildings that obviously couldn't be in 3 places at once. I flagged it to Dunbar. He shrugged. Old maps are garbage. Contractors can't read a map. Somebody fat-fingered a digit. All true. All the boring explanations are usually the right ones. We drove to the grid on our order, and the buildings were right there, exactly where we expected, so I stopped thinking about it. I think about it all the time now. A place that the records can't agree on the location of. Like even the paperwork didn't want to commit to where it was. We rolled in late afternoon, cleared the buildings the way you're taught, room by room, even though nobody believed there was anybody to clear them of. The place was dead quiet except for wind through the silos, which made a low note, almost musical, that I did not enjoy. We found the contractor's trailer. We did not find the contractors. Their stuff was all there. 2 cots, 2 foot lockers, a little kitchenette. There was a coffee pot with coffee still in it, and the trailer had a generator that had run itself out of fuel. And I remember thinking the coffee should have been 4 days cold, and instead it was just cool, like it had been poured that morning. Mathis made a joke about it. Nobody laughed, including Mathis. Their logbook was on the table. Standard stuff, equipment readings, weather, supply notes, until the last few entries, which got strange. Sensor counts that didn't make sense. One line in the second contractor's handwriting that I copied into my own notebook because it bothered me and I didn't know why. It said, radar showing 3 inside fence. We are 2. Recount confirms 3. There is no 3. And the last entry, same hand, no date. It releases what you confirm. Do not confirm. That was it. After that, blank pages. I showed it to Dunbar. He read it twice. He said it sounded like 2 guys who'd been stuck in a trailer in the middle of nowhere for too long, talking themselves crazy, which is a real thing that happens to people on isolated duty. He was right that it happens. We've all seen a guy go a little wrong on a long, lonely post. So we wrote the contractors up as missing, presumed they'd wandered off or driven off or done something stupid, and we got on with the inventory. Here's the thing that I can't make sound as bad as it was. While we were clearing the main process building, Mathis had his thermal optic up, the IR sight, the one that reads heat. Pitch dark inside, no power, so we were running on nods and thermals. And Mathis says, real casual,
Hey, who's by the silo?
and he's looking through the thermal at a heat signature standing at the far end of the building, person-shaped, the right size, just standing there, glowing white hot, the way a living body does on IR. So we light it up, flashlights, the whole stack pivots, and there's nobody there, empty concrete. Mathis puts the thermal back up, and the signature's gone. We chalked it up to a hot pipe, residual heat in the machinery, a glitch. Thermals lie all the time. I've seen them turn a warm rock into a man. But then we stacked back up to move, and out of habit, because it is the most basic thing in the world, I counted heads. And I counted us through my nods, 5 green shapes. And then Mathis, right next to me, says, through the thermal, it's showing 6 of us. 5 heads in the green, 6 bodies of heat. We stood there counting ourselves for a solid minute. Eyes said 5. Heat said 6. We were the only living things in that building, and one of us did not exist. Pratt, the mechanic, the guy who never talked, he's the one who said it. He said,
I want to go home now.
and I have never in my life agreed with anyone more. We were not going to spend the night in that building, so we pulled the trucks into a tight coil out on the flat, away from the silos, and we set a watch, and we waited for morning, because that's what you do. You wait for the sun. The sun fixes a lot of things. It was somewhere around 2, 3 in the morning when the count went wrong for real. I was on watch with Dunbar, and I did what I always do, what supply guys do in their sleep. I ran the roster in my head to keep myself awake. Dunbar, me, Mathis, Pratt, Ruiz. 5. And it felt fine. It felt completely fine. That's the part I need you to understand. There was no alarm, no dread, no wrongness. 5 felt right and good and accounted for. And then I opened my notebook. I keep a notebook. Always have. It's a habit from the job. You write down what you sign for. You write down who's got what, because memory is a liar and ink isn't. Earlier that day, out of boredom, I'd done what I always do and listed everybody out by name. Dunbar. Reyes, that's me. Mathis. Pratt. Ruiz. 5 names in my own hand, hours old. I counted the names. 5. I counted the men in the coil with my eyes in the dark. 5 shapes. And it was only when I went down the list and tried to match each name to a body that something came loose in my chest, because there was a man asleep against the wheel of the lead truck, and my head told me, calm as anything, that's Mathis. And my notebook said Mathis, and the count was right. And the longer I looked at him, the more certain I became that I had never seen that man before in my life. I cannot describe it better than that. It wasn't that he looked wrong. He looked exactly like Mathis. Same kit, same posture, same everything. It's that when I matched the name to the face, the name slid off, like trying to push 2 magnets together the wrong way. My brain insisted, Mathis, that's Mathis. The count is correct. Go back to sleep. And the count was correct. 5 and 5. And every cell in my body knew the boy who told the biscuit story was gone, and the thing wearing his outline had no name that my notebook had ever recorded. I woke Dunbar without a word. I put the notebook in his hands, and I pointed at the list, and I pointed at the man by the truck. And I watched Dunbar's face do the same thing mine had done. The reassurance. It's Mathis. The count's right. And then the slide. And then the cold. He said, very quietly, "When did we lose him?" And I said, "We didn't. The count never changed." That's what it does. I understand it now as well as anybody's going to. It doesn't take a man and leave a gap, because a gap gets noticed. A gap is one short. A gap sets off every alarm the Army's got. It takes a man and it fills the slot so smoothly that the number stays right and your own mind hands you the lie. It's not loud. It doesn't mimic anybody. Doesn't call out in a voice you love. None of that. It just quietly makes the books balance. And the books balancing is the most comforting feeling a soldier knows. And that comfort is the trap. And it had been doing it for a very long time. I went back into that trailer at first light, alone, which was stupid, but I had to. I went looking for the old logs, the ones from before the contractors. And in the pump house at the back of the works, there was a board nailed to the wall, sun-bleached, almost white, and it was a roster. Soviet-era, Cyrillic, a work crew. And the columns were a tally, present, 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 going down the list. And the tally just stopped, part way down, mid-column, like the man keeping it had set down his pen and never picked it up. There were others, a nomad's count of his own animals and family, scratched into a door frame. A coalition patrol's grease pencil strength report on a window from years before us, the number circled, then crossed out, then a smaller number written under it, then nothing. Layer after layer of people who had come to this place and started keeping count and not finished. It wasn't haunting us. That word's too small and too personal. It was reconciling, like an auditor that had been working the same set of books for 60 years, patient, total, taking the living to settle accounts with some ledger of the dead that I never saw and don't want to. It didn't care about us. We were line items. And there is no training for that. There is no weapon for that. We were 4 now, leftover soldiers who couldn't be trusted with a real mission, standing in something that had outlasted an empire. We tried the things you try. We talked about shooting it, the thing wearing Mathis. We couldn't. I want to be clear about why, because it's part of the horror. It wasn't squeamishness. It's that by every test available to us, it was Mathis. It bled when Ruiz, half out of his mind, cut its hand to check. It bled red. It complained. It told the biscuit story. You cannot raise a rifle at a man who is, by every measure your senses can take, your friend, even when a list in your pocket and a thing in your gut both swear he is not. We tried. Pratt got his weapon halfway up and put it back down and threw up instead. We talked about just leaving, flooring it, all of us, off the flat and back toward the wire. And we tried that too, briefly, in a panic, in the dark. We got maybe a kilometer, and when we stopped, shaking, to get our bearings, I counted, and we were short a truck, Pratt's truck, and Pratt. And not one of us had seen it happen, and worse, for a few seconds, not one of us could remember Pratt had been driving a separate truck at all, until I read his name off the notebook and the world snapped back, and the grief hit all at once. That's when I understood the second rule. The contractor wrote it, and I'd read it, and I hadn't believed it. It releases what you confirm. You move, you scatter, you panic. The count goes soft, the books go fuzzy, and that's exactly when it works, because confusion is where accountability dies. Running didn't get us away from it. Running fed it. We went back for Pratt's truck. The truck was there, parked neat in the coil, like it had never moved. Pratt was not. The count, of course, still felt fine, and we talked about calling higher, getting on the radio, reporting what was happening, asking for help. That's the one that nearly finished us, because Dunbar got on the net and started to report, and the voice that answered, Command's voice, our own RTO back at the FOB, said, "Roger, confirm your current strength," and read our number back to us. And I watched Dunbar open his mouth to confirm it, and I grabbed the hand mic out of his hand, because I'd finally put it together. It releases what you confirm. It's a count. It's double entry. It takes the living and posts a stand-in, but the entry isn't finished. It isn't committed until somebody with authority confirms the number and locks it into the record. The contractors figured it out at the end. The radar showed 3, there were 2. And the dead second man's last instruction, the last thing he ever wrote, was, "Do not confirm." The moment you confirm the count, the moment the books are officially, externally certified as correct, the trade goes through, permanently, and not just for you. I am convinced, to this day, that if any of us had confirmed a true and reconciled count out there, we wouldn't have just lost ourselves. We'd have committed every provisional entry in that ledger going back 60 years. Every stand-in in every role all at once. So you do not confirm the count. Ever. That was the whole game, and we'd almost lost it by doing the most natural thing in the world, which is to tell the truth to your higher headquarters. But here's the thing. The truth was exactly what would have killed us. And there were 2 leftover screw-ups in a desert, and lying to a higher headquarters happened to be the one skill our staff sergeant had spent 19 years perfecting. Dunbar took his notebook and mine, and he did the only thing he was ever truly great at. He cooked the books on purpose. He got on the net and he reported a count that was clean and complete and a total, deliberate lie. He reported full strength. He named all 5 off the original tasking order: Dunbar, Reyes, Mathis, Pratt, Linder. He reported Mathis as present and well. He reported Pratt as present and well. He left Ruiz off entirely because Ruiz was never on the paper to begin with. And he reported Linder as present, out here with us, even though Linder was 1,000% back at the FOB in a walking boot. Think about what that record now said. 5 men, named, all present, all accounted for, sensitive items complete, returning to base whole. And it was a lie in every direction at once. Mathis was gone. Pratt was gone. Linder had never come. Ruiz wasn't in it. There was no arrangement of living and dead in that whole desert that could ever make those 5 names reconcile, because at least 3 of the entries were false, and one of the men named was 100 miles away with his foot in a cast. He made the RTO log it. He made command read it back into the official record, He got our false, clean, beautiful, unreconcilable count locked into the system of the United States Army, which is a system not even that thing in the salt could reach into and edit. And then we drove off the flat and it let us go, because the books were sealed, officially closed, permanently open, certified correct and incapable of ever being true. The entry could never commit, because a committed entry has to balance, and ours never would, not in 1,000 years. We didn't beat it. You don't beat a thing like that. We jammed it. We left it holding men it could never account for, against a record that swore on the Army's own letterhead that everyone was fine. We drove back through the wire, and we were 5 bodies, and the gate guard counted 5, and the count was right. It just wasn't the same 5. I need to tell you the part that's worse than any of it, and then I'm done. We came home, all of us. That's what the paper says, and the paper is the only thing that counts. That's the whole point. That's the lesson. 5 went out, and 5 came back, and nobody was ever reported lost, because to report a loss is to admit a gap, and a gap can be confirmed, and a confirmed gap is exactly the closed-out entry the thing wanted. So Pratt was never reported missing. Mathis was never reported anything. As far as the United States Army is concerned, both of those men finished the deployment, redeployed home, and went on with their lives. I tried once, a year later, to set it right, to tell somebody Mathis was gone, that the man who'd come back wasn't him. And I got counseled, gently, by people who were trying to be kind, because the system has Mathis right there, present and accounted for, in good standing, drawing his pay, and a busted-down supply sergeant with a notebook full of crazy is not evidence. The records are clean. I made them clean. I helped. The man who came back wearing Mathis is, as far as I know, still out there living a life. I see his name come up. I don't know what he's waiting for. I don't think he's waiting for anything. I think he's a placeholder in an entry that can never commit. And as long as that entry stays jammed, he just exists, inert. One wrong note in a song nobody else can hear. I'm the only one who can hear it. I match the name to the face and it slides off every time, the way it did in the dark by the truck. I still count. I can't stop. Heads on a bus, kids at a birthday party. I count them, and I never let the number be confirmed out loud, because some animal part of me knows what confirmation does. And about a month ago, late, I got a phone call, no number, and there was a voice on it, flat and patient, and it was reading a roll, going down a list. And it got to the end of the list, and it was one short, and it asked me, calm, polite, the way command asks, to confirm my current strength. I hung up. I didn't confirm, because I know exactly what balances if I ever do. Not just me, all of it. Every provisional name in that ledger, 60 years of them, settling all at once the second somebody finally makes the count come out right. So I won't. I'll keep the books wrong until the day I die. It's the one thing I was ever good at.